everybody. Robbie here. Welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast. It's another short episode this time from me, and it's another video, like a couple of episodes ago, that has been around for a long time, has featured briefly on the podcast before, but just deserves a little bit more spotlight on it. Got some lovely response to the episode we put out a couple of episodes ago about why I coach over a period of time, not a number of sessions, and as I said in that episode, that isn't even the biggest hit of the videos that I made around this time. That's probably this one that we're going to share today, and it's about the step-by-step guide to how, and a little bit of why, I structure my first conversations with a potential client as I do. And what's lovely listening back is it really reminds me of what a steep learning curve it can be at first as we try and work out how to do this in a way that is authentic to us and effective with potential clients. And you only have to do that once, everybody. So what I was thinking about that framework of unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and then unconscious competence. And like I still do. So this video was made 2 or 3 years in to my coaching business. I'm now 10 years in, and I do it pretty similarly now. Like the times that I make jokes in an enrollment conversation at the start are slightly different, but actually it's funny to hear that some of them are the same jokes. And that doesn't matter to me. And it's obviously still alive for me and alive for my clients. And much of the way I talk through this work is the same now, albeit now I'm much more unconsciously competent with it all. So it's much more in my intuition, and I can flex it to the person, and I can fit in and let in new things as we go. So there's a couple of things to mention at the start of this episode. You'll find in the show notes, wherever you're listening, links to many of the people I mentioned. The podcast didn't exist when this video was first made, but many of the people I mentioned in the video have now been guests on the show. So you'll find links to long-form interviews with these amazing people who had influenced me from the very start of my journey below. You also talk a bit about contracting, and there's a link to a video that I made. It'll probably be a podcast episode or something about how I think about contracting. A link to that below as well. And you'll hear me talk about in this episode some of the emails I send to people before this conversation, before this initial conversation with a potential client. And actually, you can now buy those emails if you want to as part of what's called the Coaching Business Flywheel Booster Pack. So for those who don't know, the Coaching Business Flywheel is my model, which I think sums up the only 5 things you have to do to have a sustainable coaching business. And one of them is in some ways, is have this conversation that we're talking about here, although that's not explicit in it. But you can read more about that in a free ebook. There's links wherever you're listening, and it's at thecoachesjourney.com, called An Introduction to the Coaching Business Flywheel. And alongside that is it's a flowchart of all of the client journey in my business, the exact emails that I send at each point, which set the tone for the initial conversation and also follow it up. And it also includes the 2 emails, my 2 favorite emails that I send out when I want to create more clients. And you can just use them to infinity. And you can buy that at thecoachesjourney.com, and there's links wherever you're listening. But this is a fantastic resource. Of course, there's loads more that we could talk about this. There's a load more questions that might be asked. And if you have them, then the Coach's Journey community, which is my flexible, affordable easy for you to say, Robbie, group coaching program for coaches. Of course, I'm also the author of the 12-minute method series of books, so there's no retakes of this intro today. If you want to ask me questions and get into detail and develop your way of holding your initial conversations with potential clients, then the Coach's Journey community, my flexible, affordable group coaching program for coaches, could be a great place to come. And there's 4 calls a year, including usually 1 in September, 1 in November. So as this comes out, they're coming up, where you can join as a £20 member. Come along. If it's not for you, you can cancel straight away. I hope I might see you there at one of those calls later in the year. If you've got questions or comments on this content, I'd love to hear them. You can email me via thecoachesjourney.com or comment on any of our social media posts. We're on LinkedIn. And we're on Facebook. And of course, it would be great for us if you would subscribe or follow this episode wherever you're listening. And if you like it, write a little review. That makes me do a little happy dance and feel like, yes, this is working. Someone is out there listening. So do write a review. Do give the podcast a rating if you like it. Before you do that, you need to listen to this content. I'm really glad that it's out there. I'm glad that thousands and thousands of people have watched it on YouTube, and I'm glad that you're listening. Hey, Robbie here. I just wanted to record this video today about how I structure and manage and lead the first conversations I have with a prospective client. It's a video for coaches, but other people may be interested as well. To help provide some of that structure that I use, some ideas that you might borrow or steal if you're a coach. I think it's because I learned, I was told this from the start and kind of knew it from the start, but I only learned it later on, how important that leadership is in those conversations from the coach. How important it is as a client when you feel leadership from somebody and you understand where things are and where they're going. And as a coach, how important it is to step into leadership in those conversations to create the right clients for you. There's at least 4 parts of the conversation. There's before the conversation, there's a kind of pre-framing start to the conversation. There's a middle of the conversation, which is most of that first session, which for me is about coaching and diving in and giving them what I've got. And then there's a closing of the conversation. And we'll see when we get to the end of the video if there's a 5th part about what happens after that conversation. So the first thing is, before the conversation, I'm preparing people in advance. So I'm doing some of the scene setting as soon as I get an email from someone. So what that means is I usually have at least 2 emails with people, and they're referred to me or they inquire through one reason or another. As discussed elsewhere, it's almost always word of mouth one way or another. But that first conversation, the first email, they might email in. There'll be a reply from me saying, look, this is how I play, and we'll get to that. I'll model that a bit when I'm talking about the start of the conversation. This is what I do in a first conversation with a client. For me, that means no coffees, no little taster sessions, no getting to know you. It's just, we'll do some work together. And I set that up in that email. Then they probably email back to say, well, they either do or don't, email back to say, great, let's do it. And then I email them a bit more information about what will happen, and I remind them again of that. And I remind them of how long the session will be, and I usually set aside 2 hours for these conversations. That's how I play, not everyone's the same. And actually, maybe that's a good thing to say at this point. I'm not saying that I've got this down and that it's perfect. And I'm not saying that you should do exactly what I do. But for me, it's been important, as I've learned how I work, to take different pieces from different people. And the only way you can do that is if people tell you what they do. So take what's useful from this, do what's useful. It'll have your flavor. If you copy what I do, that's fine. Most of my stuff was originally copied off other people. It's always got my flavor when I deliver it. So feel free to take that. But I'm not an expert, right? This is not some selling machine that will definitely convert all clients into paying clients and all that kind of thing. This is just how I like to run these conversations and how I like to speak to clients. And I hope it's useful. So first of all, there's those emails which prepare people for what's going to happen in the conversation. Then we meet. Now, these days I do more and more of my work online, so it's often on Zoom, but sometimes it's in person as well. And what I learned, I guess to give again a bit more context, this whole piece it takes kind of 2 main inspirations. Phil Bolton, who founded the coaching school where I trained, and Rich Litvin, who is the co-author of The Prosperous Coach. But there are other bits and pieces that I've learned from different people at different times that now become a part of it. And it's a bit hard for me to separate what's what from what I do now and who it came from. But having said that, there's a really nice Rich Litvin video about how to coach people you've never met, or something like that. And it's worth checking out. I didn't take the inspiration from there, but it's a really concise way of looking at this initial part. So the first part of the conversation, it involves some getting to know people. It involves some, building rapport. And then it involves some contracting. Now, I've done some of this already, but what I tend to talk about at this point, I talk a bit about confidentiality, especially if there's a close referral. It's good to remind people of that. I've sent across some stuff in writing a bit about what coaching is, and recommended people read through my website where there's some more information. But I almost always ask them, have you had coaching before, and what was your experience of it? What was useful? And that starts to get them into the coaching space. I'll talk a bit about what coaching is. These days I tend to tick off 3 things. Let me see if I get this right. So I tend to tick off, I won't give any advice, but I make it clear. That doesn't mean I won't say anything. It doesn't mean I won't offer anything, but I just encourage them at that point that it's about it coming from them, and that if they want to dismiss anything that I say, that's fine, and we'll play with that. And I'm saying it without attachment. I'm saying it to help them and support them in whatever way we're working. So broadly, I won't give any advice. It's always forward-looking, and I make it clear, we might look at things that have happened before, but the aim will always be about creating the future and about how will we use this next. And there's always some kind of action from it. And that's my preference, right? Different people's coaching are different. But for me, there's almost always, it's not quite true to say always, there's almost always some practical steps to be taken in the world. And if there isn't, there's some very specific situations where that might not be the case. If it's been a particularly deep, important session, well, the action then is to allow things to settle sometimes, perhaps. So I'll explain that. I'll explain a bit about the notes that I'm doing. I usually take a few notes, and especially if it's online, people can't see that. Make some jokes about not checking Facebook. And I always do a time check again. And it's interesting to hear on that video of Rich's, he says that as well, and I found that's really important, because no matter how many times you say, it'll be an hour, it'll be 2 hours, sometimes people have booked things in. And also as a coach, I find it sometimes useful to know, is that a hard finish? Do they have to go on the dot in 90 minutes time? Or is there a bit of flexibility there? Because that means if we're right in the middle of something, there's a bit of time to run over. But that's my attitude to time. Different coaches, different people feel very differently about that. And then I'll talk a little bit about what'll happen in this conversation. So I'll say, look, I'm the way I like to do this, most people haven't done coaching and certainly haven't done coaching with me. And even if you've done some coaching with me before, my coaching might have changed this thing. You might have changed. In fact, both almost certainly will have changed. So it's important to really feel, where are we now and are we the right match? And so the best way to do that is to do some work. So my aim for the conversation is to give them everything I've got, give them my absolute best, recognizing that phrase, I borrowed that from Jamie Smart, give them my absolute best for the conversation, and see where we get to. And then there's a few, and this is what I say, right? And then there's a few things that might happen at the end. We might think that actually coaching isn't what you need right now. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes what people just need and get from a first conversation with me is the energy to take something forward. Coaching is sometimes about helping people do what they want to do anyway, or getting people to do what they want to do anyway. Sometimes actually the only intervention people need from me is a shot of energy or a little understanding of something, a new insight, and then away they go. Now what I say is, if that's the case, I'll usually recommend a resource. So that's one thing that might happen. Sometimes coaching might be the right thing for them, but I'm not the right person, or a helping profession or some kind of help is the right thing, but it's not me. And then I might make a referral to another coach, to somebody else, to a consultant, I don't know. It could be any number of things. So it could be, this is borrowed from Giovanna Caposa, she told me this. It might be a referral, it might be a resource. We might decide that after, so part of the aim for this conversation is to get to a yes or no. Now sometimes I say that explicitly, but that's definitely what I'm doing. Like, do I want to work with this person? And do I think that now is the right time? And do they want to work with me? Now sometimes at the end of one conversation, even a 2-hour one, I'm not there. In that case, it's important to let people know that up front, right? So to contract in that way. So I would say, look, we might not be ready. And so in that case, we might want to meet again and arrange another call on the same arrangement as a gift from me. And then we'll put that in the diary if that's the case at the end of this conversation. Or the fourth thing is, so it's a resource, a referral, we might meet again, or if both of us feel like it's the right thing to do, we might talk about what it looks like to work with me. And I check in, is that okay? And I share, look, I'm just going to give you everything I've got for this. Now, we need to get into a place where we can trust each other. And so what I'm saying to you is, if I'm going down the wrong way, if I'm getting too deep, if I'm not getting deep enough, if there's something I'm skirting over, any of those things and more, be honest, tell me. And then we can do that, because we'll get used to working with each other. But my aim will be to give everything I've got in that session and serve the client as well as I can. And that's the end of the first part, give or take. The second part, Robbie, the first part of the proper conversation. The third part then is the conversation itself. And here I just coach. Often there's a bit of telling the client's story. There'll be a power in that for them. Often there's a future focused bit. Where do you want to get to? What might this coaching look like? But not always. And I genuinely just give everything I've got, give them the best coaching I possibly can for the rest of the time that we spend doing this. And then we see where we get to. And then at the end of the conversation, a few things might happen. I might say, look, I don't think you're ready. I don't think coaching is right for you now. One of those kind of things. But I got this recommendation of this resource, this book, this article, this video, these things, perhaps an exercise to give them. I might make a referral. If I'm not sure, I might say, look, I think I'd like to meet again. And I recommend we do that. And then I'm not sure where we are yet. I'm not sure if coaching's right for you now, but I think we'll know by another conversation. I might get to that. And then I'll skip this, and this could happen at the end of this first conversation, this fourth one, or it could happen at the end of the next one. And then I'll share, look, I've done this work now. I've got a good idea that we could do some powerful work together. And often I'll share why. And this is the truth, right? I have some criteria that I'm looking for that I know my best clients have. The people I do my best work with, the most inspiring work, place where I'm close to or in the zone of genius. And I check, do those people have those things? And if they do, I tell them, right? And that's exciting and it's nice. Because there's some great things about that. In that, there's some of the things that are wonderful about them and I admire about them. And also, there's some of the challenges they face. And if that resonates with them, I check in. Does this resonate with you? Do you hear yourself in this description? And usually, if I've judged it right and trusted my instinct, I do. And then I'll say, well, so look, I think we could do some powerful work together if it's the right time. Would you like to hear what working with me more would look like? And that's a really gentle question, and it's important to notice that. And it gives them permission to say, no, actually, it's not right for me now. And sometimes they do, and that's great. And then, if they say yes, then I'll go into the proposal. And the place to go for this is another Rich Litvin video, The Art of the Proposal. I'll put a link for that just below the video. It's a brilliant video. I've adapted it to be about how I work, and I play it slightly different in different ways. And then at some point at the end of that, there's the question, so, what do you think? Where do we go from here? Are you ready? Is this the right thing for you now? Again, a gentle question, but often it's just, so what do you think? And that broadly covers what happens in the conversation. Now, there's a load of intricacies around that at the end. What happens when they say yes, they have questions, and part of that is just experience and getting used to it. I guess a piece to say is, sometimes the question I get is, how do you bridge between the coaching and that proposal section? I bring the coaching to an end, in the way that I bring all coaching to an end. What are the things you're taking away from this conversation? What stands out? What's new? I had a new one recently to ask people at the end of conversations sometimes, if I could guarantee there was one insight from this conversation that you wouldn't forget, what would it be? Tie that up, tie up the action, get it specific, and then move in that, okay, well, I've got this feeling that this won't where we've been. This working together could be a possibility for us, and talk about that. So that, I think, covers most of it. There's loads of questions to be asked around this. It's based on all these things I've learned, including the Prosperous Coach, including the stuff I learned from Phil. Please feel free to ask them. Please feel free to get in touch below, wherever. And best of luck with your coaching.
Hey everybody, Robbie here again, and just a couple of quick things to share with you, remind you of before you go on for the rest of your day. If you love this episode, you'll love the free ebook, An Introduction to the Coaching Business Flywheel, which you can get at thecoachesjourney.com. As I said at the start, it's my attempt to boil everything I've learned from my years of supporting, coaching, and interviewing coaches about their businesses into one simple model containing the fundamentals of any sustainable coaching business. The only things you have to do to have a sustainable coaching business, and the things that if you don't do them, you can't have a sustainable coaching business. You can get it for free at thecoachesjourney.com. And you might love the Coach's Journey community. That's my flexible, affordable group coaching program for coaches. Set it in one in this take. And you pay between £20 and £100 a month, get access to a certain number of group coaching calls a year, plus some one-to-one time with me if you're a full member. We get to get into things like this every month if you want to. And of course, you get the chance to be connected to other amazing coaches on their own journeys too. You can join at thecoachesjourney.com/community. And now's a good time to join because the September and November calls are both open to Diamond members. So you can join for £60, come to those two calls, and then decide after that if you want to stay paying £20 a month. Thanks so much to everyone who's supported the Coach's Journey over the years, but in particular, thanks Alex O'Neill, Alex Whitten, Alan Bedding, David Norris, Jessica Jem, Michael Trugman, Nikki Marsden, and Lucinda Rush for your ongoing support. Thank you too for listening, and hope to have you back with us on the Coach's Journey podcast sometime soon.